So I am Matt Cross. I'm the kind of recent new community manager for the pros and content community, the community for pros who use content to deliver business results. And one of the issues that we hear over and over again from marketers in the community and just in general is that they're being asked to do more with less right now. I think a lot of us are probably in that same boat. So we grabbed together a couple of the marketers who are doing that and experiencing it to just kind of talk through how we can supercharge growth in this environment. So, please ask questions, drop them in the chat. Feel free to speak up. It's a meeting environment. So just have a good, fun conversation. And we have our community kind of evangelist, John von Brachel, here to be the host.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Matt. Really excited for this conversation. I'm John von Brachel. I head up the content lab at Novartis. The thoughts and words and ideas of this conversation, like my Twitter feed, are my own and not representing Novartis at all. But with that said, I am really excited to talk about growth and the concept of doing more with less and other phrases like that seem to be entering the lexicon more frequently. And, I don't know too many content marketing leaders who haven't really been focused on growth. I think growth for a lot of us just is defined differently. And I think we have to maybe fine tune it here and there, depending on the needs of our business partners and our audiences. But I'm really excited to be a part of a conversation with Brachel Watson and Andy Ramirez, two real leaders in this space. You're going to hear a lot related to B2B, some B to C. I'll definitely chime in on that. It's a strong dialogue that makes these better. So we really hope that you participate by putting some questions in the chat. We'll be having our conversation, the three of us, but we're going to bring you in when we have a really good question, put you on camera and ask you to participate in the conversation so that we can have fun here while we're learning. So Brachel is with Paul Hastings, law firm in Texas, and Andy is with New Relic, and he's out in Seattle. Let me ask you to start, Brachel. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your title. Tell us about your company. Tell us about the audiences you serve, and what you're doing. What you're doing at Paul Hastings.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for letting me join in the conversation today. I'm really looking forward to it. So my title is Managing Director of Growth Marketing. So I work at one of the largest law firms in the world. We're like number 26, about 2,000 attorneys worldwide. So our clients, or like kind of the targets that we're looking at, are corporations. So we look at asset managers, banks, public and private corporations, and we help serve them through really being a business strategy with a legal focus. And so how do we kind of connect with them and really add value throughout the various life cycles of the problems and challenges that they are dealing with.
That's cool. And like on the marketing, like discipline within the firm, a lot of firms like Paul Hastings, they're pretty strong and powerful and historic marketing organizations. Where would you say you sit in that organization? And as far as the growth marketing leader, like, is it in content? Is it in all messaging? Tell us about that.
A little bit of everything. I do have some really amazing comms partners that they work on the external communications around press releases, bylines, things like that we obviously leverage, because you should be leveraging all of that to the greatest extent that you can. But my focus is around revenue technology channels, both offline and online, and then developing the campaign strategy. So how do we rethink? That's really kind of where we are really evolving a lot this year, is how do we rethink how we are addressing our clients? A lot of what we had done previously was really individualized business units or individual attorneys that put out client alerts or blogs or content of interest, but we didn't really grow around a client base. So we've really started to adapt to like 6 key personas. And when we build out those personas, we do it a little bit differently. It's not like this person of this age and this ethnicity. We talk about what are the challenges they're facing, how does the market or their company see them, and how do they want to be seen, and how do we address that gap.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's really cool. Well, I would love to go deeper on that, and we'll make that a part of this. And Andy, tell us about your life out west and what you do at New Relic, what New Relic does, yeah, give us your intro.
Yeah, sure. So through a long series and a long career, I kind of started in the IT space. I joke that I'm a recovering engineer. The truth is I was a terrible engineer. So I ended up in marketing. And through that, I got to know the tech industry, got to know what we're doing, and really have always been or have been for many years now looking at ways to serve customers through technology. And I've been in the B2B space, B2C space, and I've gravitated towards one of the tech meccas, which is Seattle. New Relic is actually in San Francisco, so I'm a full-time remote employee. But what New Relic is a company that does basically analytics, if you think about it that way, like Google Analytics for your website if you're a marketer, except they do it for all the things that run your entire stack. So the servers, the drives, the memory, the network, the infrastructure. They have fake users that go or dynamic users that go and check your website to make sure it's running, that kind of stuff. And it's the way to understand where things are falling apart before your customers see it. And what I do for them is this is a public trading company, and I'm the head of growth. So I own driving the net new account number, making sure we're acquiring new customers, we're acquiring users. Actually, we're a very product-led growth organization. And so where that comes to content is I don't write content that speaks to the business buyers, or my team doesn't. And we don't focus on putting stuff out there that's intended to drive decision makers to our organization. We work to drive the users and to give them positive experiences, get them to use our product, get them to find value in the product. And through that, we know that they'll grow into paying customers and decision makers will come.
That's great. So are they are they individuals? Are they teams? Obviously, B2B means beta humans, right? I mean, one of the things we forget is that B2B really does mean that you have to express yourself in very human ways and emotional ways. Tell us about that audience. To give us a little bit more of your perspective on who they are, what they're doing day to day, and what they value and what you're delivering to them.
Yeah, actually, I really like what Rachel said about, it's personas, and personas aren't just like, how old are you and how much money do you make and where do you sit? Personas are really, what are you trying to accomplish on a day-to-day basis? What are your problems that you're facing? And can we actually help you with those? Let's start with that, right? I see a lot of marketing go out that is speaking to people that don't belong to that organization, in the sense of there's not a fit between the user or the person they're trying to reach and the offer that they're making. And so we really try to focus on making sure that we're talking to the people at the level of the problems that we actually solve and where that sweet spot is of need and what we offer.
Rachel, I think that brings us back to the persona work you were doing, which is getting you down to like really the nitty gritty of who this audience is, and how can we grow if we don't really know the audiences and where they're going and their trends and their we're going to get into channel deliveries shortly, but tell us a little bit more about that persona work and how it's being applied to your day to day.
Absolutely. So obviously one of the, I think, benefits of being in B2B, and this goes back to the human aspect of this, is we actually can know the 20 or 30,000 people that we really care about. Like it's not that we don't care about people outside of that, but there are a distinct set of people and we can really get to know them on a deeper level. And so we spend a lot of time really going through what are they being seen for and where do they really want to be? So for example, one of our key personas is obviously general counsel. So the head legal person at like public companies. A lot of people think of them as, oh, they deal with all the contracts, but what they want to be seen as is kind of an advisor to the board, and really being able to be that not only legal advisor but a strategic business advisor. And how can we help them provide content, provide insights, connections, even to allow them to answer those questions to the board? So we have built out about 6 starting right now. And then we continue to narrow in on that. The other thing that we use a lot of is around behavioral and intent modeling. So how do we take all of that data and pull it together to feed those models and understand them over time, both as an individual as well as at a group level.
That's really cool. So tell us, and by the way, I don't know anyone in the Chief General Counsel's office and any of the companies that I've worked with who haven't really wanted to be part of key strategic thinking and actually being out front with that so that they can help you kind of like most of these people are very ambitious creatively, but then they want to help you get something through. So that's really cool. But tell us like the kinds of things that you're sharing with your key audiences. Like tell us what it is tangibly. Is it digital information on channels that are bespoke to their needs? Is it finding them as they're looking at things on while they're surfing TikTok and getting that digital signal to send the right message to them? Where are you?
So on our side, we are on a lot of various digital channels, but also in person. We have to really combine both of those because it really is a relationship-based business. So we spend a lot of time understanding, where are they and targeting them on everything from some social media. We're thoughtful about the social media because obviously law and social media can be a weird combination. But we also. You mean LinkedIn? Yeah, like LinkedIn, we do some on Instagram, but you have to be thoughtful about what you're putting out there. It's a lot more humanistic, less about like client wins. So obviously evolving for the channel.
I think that's important though, right? Like you got to meet your audience where you know that there are and where you can tell that story.
Yeah, and we do get a lot of feedback. And I've had this when I worked in IT services. The same people were like, "Oh, our people aren't on Facebook," and it's like, but that's where all of our clicks are coming from. So of course they are. So being able to use that data to understand it. We actually have been doing a lot of research digitally as well. So obviously you've got your stakeholder maps, but then really diving into those individual people and saying, what are they reading? What are they sharing? And going directly to those, like Private Equity International and getting placements in that, both from a PR side as well as ours. So we really home it in based on a lot of that research. And then, of course, follow that up with offline. So how do we make those connections with the various lawyers and especially with the ability to cross-sell or add more value to them. So.
And what is it? What's the it? Is it insights that you want them to share? Is it insights that they can apply practically to their business? Is it long form written? Is it videos? What is it?
We do a little bit of everything, but the ones that I think are the most impactful are almost hypothetical situations of saying, if you have this type of problem, here are the couple of things you should start thinking about. Give them just enough that they know what we're talking about. But obviously, especially in law, we can't give them advice throughout this. So we need them to talk to us. So making sure that we're ahead of them. So for example, with our board of directors, general counsel campaign, we're saying, here are the top 7 things you should be thinking about. Here are the first few questions that you should be asking internally. And if you aren't getting the answers that you think you should be getting, talk to us. And we're happy to, help you further that conversation. We do that through written. We have obviously the website, digital, and then of course video. Video is a very powerful form.
You're tracking all the triggers that. So we'll get into that because that's going to get into the growth. Andy, back to you now on the it. What's the it? What is Andy putting into the ecosystem?
It's honestly, I kind of sometimes feel like it's the blob just absorbing everything, right? I've been on this trek here at New Relic trying to explain to all of the teams that generate content that they are in fact content generators. They don't realize that, but the people that are out there putting up career sites or writing job entries, or they're doing AR and PR, or they're doing developer relations, or our video and our customer stories teams. Everybody, even the folks on my team that write the emails, they are all content creators, right? And the reason this matters is because I not only do I focus on growth, right? But we live in a world, especially the most recent months, where everything has to be ROI focused, right? And I look at every bit of effort that goes into creating a piece of content and I say, how else can you use that thing? And how do we make sure that others are aware of what's going out there or what's going on? We see somebody traveling from our offices to Singapore to do a presentation, and they post to their social media that presentation, and then it just sits there to their audience of 100, 1,000, whatever many people is. Or it could be shared around internally and we can all post it. Our corporate accounts can post it, those kinds of things. And even those little in the moment examples of just taking something someone did that they never thought was going to be creating content for New Relic and making it so and making it move the needle is kind of my obsession, right? Like making sure everything that happens has some path back to growth.
I love that. That's so cool. You're opening the aperture of what content is at New Relic, and you're celebrating it. And it's like having, everyone, it's an old thing that we would do sometimes with agencies in the past where, we would remind our teams that we're always on, and you just had to just turn all the channels on. And it really kind of helped pave the way for stronger experiences that are, basically responding to people where they are, because you can get your head down on a channel and you can get your head down on what you define as content. You're forgetting that everyone's interacting with New Relic in a lot of different ways. So having the teams be a part of that is really smart. I love it.
Yeah. We've been doing a lot around employee advocacy too. I think that's such an undervalued channel. And I think in probably every company, right? Where how do we make sure that everybody is seeing, everybody's able to share, or at least go out and click like on our shares so that it goes out to a bigger network. It's kind of amazing how such simple things, doing more with less, getting everybody to just click like is a lot. But it helps a lot.
No, I think it's huge. And I think that's a really important strategy is employee participation and the extension, especially if you have sales teams, but any interaction in a business like yours, I can't imagine, if you can, I like the way Andy put it, or the way you're thinking it through, Rachel, is that they're all extensions of the company, but they're all content providers in many ways. So let's get to the triggers. Let's get to the things that you can measure, and what you're required to measure, or you probably, knowing you too, having spoken to you, that you feel compelled to measure to prove growth, to prove that your efforts are driving behaviors that are driving growth. Let's talk about how you're measuring that. Why don't we start with you, Andy?
Sure. I mean, there's how we're measuring it and then how I want to measure it. And not to plug Notch, but I'm actually talking to them because I think they can help me kind of nick it up a notch, right? But the idea is, it used to be that getting eyeballs, you could understand and say, fine, we're getting eyeballs, we're getting likes, we're getting shares, we're getting visitors to these blog entries, these content pieces, our customer stories, whatever it is. And that was enough because you could make the assumption that value was happening downstream. But now in the world that we've been in the last couple of years, because it's been a tough last couple of years for everyone, we have to know more. We have to know, how is it that we're impacting the business? And for me, some measurements are quite easy, right? Is this piece of content influencing signups? Great, we can do that all day long. That's relatively simple. But what do you do if it's a piece of content that lives between the sign up and someone becoming a $100,000 customer, or a piece of content that influenced some company implementing some new feature or functionality in our platform that grows their consumption by a petabyte a year, right? Or whatever it is. And that's where things get really, really tricky, because there's no silver bullet that says account over here, saw a blog entry over here, and it was just one user, but that user's on the right team, and because of that, we credit that blog entry with the thing, right? Or the social post, right? And it's something that you don't even own, it's external. So we really do have to find ways to get creative in measuring and just keep chipping away at that never-ending rock, right? We're never going to come out with the David at the other end of it. Right now, it's like a somewhat nebulous blob, and eventually I want it to look something like a statue. And
has anyone really solved the multi-touch attribution needs?
I mean, I've been doing this 20 years and I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Right. So let's just put it that way. I think a lot of people have gotten closer and better, and there's great technologies out there to help you see that influence. But as long as you can take it a step further and show that not only are you getting eyeballs, but those eyeballs are yielding or correlating to some sort of intended result, whether it's revenue or closed won opportunities or whatever it may be, that's panacea. And you've just got to do as much as you can and know that that's good enough, and then prioritize your work based on that.
Yes, correlated growth, especially for long sale experiences like New Relic and Paul Hastings. You know, it's not a transactional relationship. You've got to build relationships with people, and you've got to see growth. So you have to correlate your work with that growth, and you have to be very creative about it. And I think relentless in trying to align the performance with the work, and just seeing through endless views at data and analytics, trying to find the insights that will hopefully drive change in what you're doing. Because, you know, we're never going to do it right if we think we've just got it right, because our audiences are changing. But I love that. And tell us about what's happening at Paul Hastings in that regard, and identifying key measures for growth success.
So we are in a bit of an education mode, because so much of like the digital is new to this industry, but also the firm. So we actually have been trying to get people even to learn that sending an email is not the like measure of success. It's like that open rates and click through. So we've been actually over the last year feeding that back to people of like, how many clicks are you getting? How many opens are you getting? Is anybody actually engaging with this content at a high level? And then as we've been, and as we've been kind of moving down, we've been obviously creating kind of micro conversion paths, right? Of, are they getting to our website? Are they connecting like with the attorney bios and hitting the phone number or the email? What are those things? And how, you know, to Andy's point, you're never going to know exactly, and it's a very hard thing to do, but how often can we kind of see those touch points and how often we're touching them, which things are actually influencing these, to really get them to that attorney bio and connect with us to open an opportunity. So
what are some of the surprises you had? Like, have you had surprises in what's performed well compared to what you anticipated would perform well?
Actually, it is an interesting thing. Obviously, we've been talking to Notch about this new platform that they're putting out, but some of the more simple things that work, because it's so relationship based. We've gotten some really amazing results on a very simple like digital advertising campaigns that is really more about validation. I've never really focused a lot on like validation type things of like quotes, and we've always filtered in client stories, which we don't have as much of here. But then that type of thing works really well here. We have, at least in our industry, we've got a couple things that are like basically rankings similar to like waves or MQs in the technology, and we put those out, and that's worked really well. The other one is obviously we've been leveraging our laterals when they come in. So essentially you can bring your book of business with you, and so it's similar to kind of like a acquisition strategy in the tech field of like, how do we use this person's network and their current clients to grow? And so we've been able to target based off of that and kind of enhance our value statement for whatever area they're in. So those ones I think are the biggest ones so far. But we're continuing to kind of grow with these new opportunities. So
yeah. And I'm sure that there's a lot of, I guess, creative production to data reality. Absolutely. Tensions. If you when you start to create shifts like this, you know, the question is, how much does the data drive what you're going to put in market, and how do you make those decisions? Mm-hmm. And have you noticed, you know, biases being, you know, either considered or being considered just biases, and you have to ignore them when you're putting something in market and you're starting to see data that's informing growth, and you have to make a pivot that really wasn't, or that was the surprise? Do you have any issues with that, or is it, you know, tell us about that?
Yeah, so I typically, and I'm sure a lot of the other kind of marketers out there, I typically like to do the 80-20 for like my budget of like 80% on the things that work, 20% of like testing and playing and stuff. And what I'm finding is we're having to do almost the opposite, where it's like at least 50-50 of just like playing with a lot of things and seeing what's working and failing it fast though, right? The goal there is to say, okay, make sure you're setting it up properly, and that this is working or this isn't working, and we're going to run it for a month. And if it's failed, it's failed. And that's a win to us of like understanding, did this market fit this type of messaging, or what tweaks do we need to make it? So we do that a lot around, and part of that is like pulling it all together. And I'm sure everybody else is dealing with this, is we've got 14 different platforms with all of these different pieces, and how do we pull that together to see the whole campaign so we can really say, is it actually working? Because if you only look at LinkedIn or only look at Instagram, you're not going to know, is that working? So that's been a lot of our strategy over the last 6 months, is kind of formalizing those dashboards and really making sure that as we're playing, we're doing it fast, so that we're using the money in a smart way, even though we're kind of testing a lot.
I presume you're using you're building those dashboards manually, just getting the data where you can, and having teams put them all in one piece of paper.
Yeah, unfortunately right now, but we are moving more into Power BI. We just got Salesforce, so we're very excited about the upgrade.
It'd be nice to have those always on dashboards that are multi-channel
Absolutely.
and give you apples to apples guidance.
Exactly.
How about you, Andy?
Yeah,
when it comes to, are you failing fast?
Yes, very much so, right? And in fact, more so, I'm getting my team away from investing in those really big pieces of content or videos or those kinds of things, because there's just one, partially in this particular audience that I speak to today, but I think across a lot of marketers that I speak to, I'm seeing that there's less appetite for those really big downloads and things like that. There are less people that want to fill out a form to download, report X or whatever it is. And instead, the way to kind of make that work is to take the thing you're building, and if you still want to build the big thing, also build 50 bite-sized versions of it, whether they be micro videos, infographics, displays, short blog entries, social posts, all that, and put those out there first, right? And create a path down to, but if you want the really long, extensive report that's 64 pages, here you go, this is where you can get it. And in fact, I've taken it a step further. We don't even gate that anymore, right? We just tell people, reach out to us if you want, right? Like, we don't need your name for you to get this piece of content. And so far, that's actually kind of worked out. That might be unique, or at least more leaning towards a developer and user-led type of audience than a buyer audience, that strategy. But the other thing that we're doing a lot of is to try to think about really integrated campaigns, in the sense of everybody's got the same theme and everybody's got the same idea. And for at least a month every quarter, we're all executing on that particular theme. And what that's done for me is allow me to actually leverage those pieces that we create in all of those different ways, and have the whole global team go out near simultaneously with this type of messaging. And it has significantly improved our results, 28% higher engagement with all of marketing when we're running this as an on versus when we're off, right? So the idea of just being concerted and thoughtful about that, and then that allows us to minimize the cost of investment because we're reusing a lot of stuff, has really worked out for us quite well.
Yeah, I love it. And I love, first off, going to the gated, non-gated. Has anyone seen a lot of success with gated platforms? Obviously, you get a lot of signups and they're confirmed signups, but opening it up and then having stronger triggers to give us more of your information after we've given this to you for free just seems smart. And I think it's industry specific, obviously, but I like what you did there, and I liked your pivot there. I also loved how, for you, failing fast means less episodic investment. You might have episodic experiences, but you're atomizing them and making sure that they're in market, and you're testing that. And I think that's smart as well. One of the key, and Matt, keep me honest here if you have any key questions you want to jump in on, but as we do that, one of the key topics here is, do less. What is it? Do less.
Do more with less.
Do more with less, right? and I've been turning that on a dime. We've been talking a lot about just doing less better, and I think that aligns with what you're saying, Andy. It's like doing less better. It's not about the volume. It's about how you're distributing it and how purposeful you are in distributing content and learning and adapting in market. So with that in mind, how do you define doing less better? How would you, if I pose that question on you, where you guys are? If someone say, are you doing less better? Could you answer that?
Yeah, one thing I would point out, which aligns to the comment you were making, right, is that when you're doing less better, you're taking more advantage of the things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's an anecdote from I listen to gong calls every now and then, and one anecdote is somebody had been kind of in the sales cycle prior to us launching kind of this new campaign strategy and Post-it, and they had a comment about before, and their before comment was, I would see all your stuff and your org was showing. And what they meant by that is like, you could tell that this was written by product and that was written by the docs team and that was that team. And after, it all seemed to align. And I always tell people our marketing should really feel like a set of luggage, right? They're all different pieces, but they're made by the same manufacturer. And that's a benefit in that you don't have to do as much because you can reuse so much more. And that's doing it better because you have more eyeballs collaborating on less things. So the quality of it goes up. And then you reuse more of it, so your ROI on it goes up. And that's kind of been my absolute focus, right? To just Moneyball content creation and delivery against our returns.
I love it. And I think the industry is starting to adapt to that. I'm starting to see more and more of our media partners doing less to create net new, but to just optimize what people have. And it's really good because they're starting with good things that companies are creating. And they're saying, look, if this is what you want to have in market, let us be the experts in ways to take that important asset you have and optimize it for the channels that you're and the audiences that you're delivering to as experts of channel delivery. Yeah. How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, we do something very similar. Like if we actually have like what we call like splintering playbooks of like, if we have a webinar, what are like the 10 things that we want to do every time? And because and then you can make sure that you're being consistent, you're tracking and saying, okay, well, this 10th thing never works, so let's cut that out. Or, making sure that we got some time over time understanding of what those are doing. But it absolutely is like the key to this is like, how do you reuse this? We do get these papers that are written and they feel like an academic paper, and we have to say, how do we write this so a normal person can read this? So like what are those pieces or the key insights that we can like put out there? And then again, to Andy's point, we can drive them to the final long form paper, but even lawyers don't want to sit down and read 16 pages, right? Like nobody has time for this anymore. So how do we really get that message out quickly? The other thing that I think is really helpful, and we do something very similar of those kind of thematic campaigns, we call them obviously growth campaigns, is once you start getting everybody an understanding of that's what you're doing and that's what you're pushing, and that all they have to do is help you create a piece and you can like fold it in very quickly for them and it will get a large amount of views and understanding, you suddenly have a lot of content in that area. Versus when you're saying, write me anything, or like, what do you want to write about? If I say, here are the 6 buckets, can you help me? You end up getting more in those spaces, maybe less overall, but more in the areas that are really impactful.
That's great. Is this question from you, Andy?
This is. I actually want to turn tails here for a second.
Good.
Right? I have
That's the way it should
question
be
for everyone else, which is
awesome.
One of the things I've always dreamt of doing and never really been successful at is getting everybody in the organization to volunteer to write content all the time, to just mass produce it, because no one wants to hear what I have to say. They want to hear what our engineers have to say, or our HR people have to say, or that kind of stuff, right? So I'm just curious if anybody's had any success doing that, or even tried it.
Oh, it's a shame. Phoebe had to drop because her computer just started to run updates in the middle of this meeting. And it's a really shame because she is doing this for us here at Notch. So she'll just schedule, I think it's a half hour or an hour with each of our SMEs. She then has to take on some of the work to like turn it into whatever the format makes sense, but it at least is there. She records it, she gets the transcript, she can go back and pull the quotes and have it there. And I think, Matt, aren't you doing that on social as well?
Yeah, so I do that internally at Notch, so as well, where we just put 30 minutes on with say the CEO or somebody and just have a conversation, ask our questions, and then we use that for social posts and video and text. I've also seen it like kind of in a little bit less limited success with like AEs and CSMs and stuff who are going like, this was a few years ago of writing blog posts, but I think what works really well is that like kind of blend of, it's really big ask to have somebody just sit down and write something who doesn't normally do that, but like a 30-minute call, pick their brain, record it, and then we use a tool called Otter just because it's been really effective for us to turn it into text, and then we do part of that heavy lift of then turning it into something that we can use. But that's worked really well.
Hey, Stephen, it looks like you were talking about this yesterday at an event. You want to kind of tell us what you guys kind of were talking about, what you were diving deep into?
Yeah, we Ellen knows all about this. She was guiding that discussion. But we did not just copying content yesterday. It was my first one I've ever been to. But we were talking about doing more with less and being okay with a smaller amount of content, or finding ways to offload the effort so that you are not doing all the work yourself. And a lot of it boiled down to, okay, what a lot of us, with the exception of those of us who started as engineers and then shifted into marketing, the lucky dogs, the rest of us are coming to the expertise of our SMEs from the outside, and we have to learn like a dog picking up scraps from the table. Their expertise is what everyone wants. We're just the go-between. We're just the one who's making it available for other people to find and making it more parsable. I don't know if you've ever read stuff from a developer or an IT team that's trying to explain a very technical concept. They don't always do the best job of underclocking themselves for the rest of us who didn't take comp sci in college. But on the flip side, like if we're not pestering them constantly to get that information, because they're very busy people and they obviously have more important things to be doing than answering 101 level questions for all us marketing people. But if we're not getting that information from them, then we're doing tons of research on our own, which can be just as convoluted because of someone who wasn't competent both as a communicator and an expert wrote it. Then you're running into the same problem of, okay, how do I parse this and then translate it for the people who are going to be reading it on the other end? The key, one of the things we talked about that was the best idea that came out of that was, if you can give them a way to brain dump, info dump all that information to you, then you can parse it, digest it a little bit, ask them follow-up questions if you need to, either in that meeting or later, and then you can then convert that into something legible for the broader public. And then if you then take that one piece of content, whether that's just a resource that you keep internally and said, hey, anybody who comes on board who doesn't know this stuff already, read this document. You can then take sound bites or quotes or smaller pieces and break them into blog posts or social posts or podcasts, and splintering it that way is a good way to make the most of what you're using, to use every part of the buffalo, so to speak. And make sure that your single effort goes as far as you can make it go without having to go do 15 hours of research all over again.
That's great, Stephen. No, it's great insight. One of my favorite content creators out there is on this call. His name is Josh Friedl, and he was talking about someone who knows the art of content creation and knows the art of content delivery. Josh, you chimed in talking about something called Vouch. How does that help you?
Yeah, we just started implementing it in the last weeks at my most recent position, so I can't say how it turned out. But it's a free tool, is a freemium model too. But we were using it. I was working for an ed tech company called Emeritus, and we were using it for testimonials from executives who have enrolled in executive education programs, talk about their experience. But we also thought, on the other hand, we could use it. For example, each of the programs has a coach involved in the program, and have them talk about what the benefits are of the program to an individual thinking of enrolling. So this is like a free, seamless thing. You don't have to sit down, do a record, an interview, record it, transcribe it, spend hours writing it, just kind of. And we could use it either for the video. It produces a stitched together video, or you have all the files there and the transcripts too.
And then you can do what you want with them.
Yeah.
I often find like doing more with less and going to, Rachel, And Andy, really quick, means prioritizing before the asset's even thought through. Are you involved in the strategic discussions that allow you to, does the splintering playbook, for example, is that where you prioritize programming larger campaigns?
We try to program the larger campaigns first, because again, kind of helping people swarm to the content that you're looking for, and having that be data driven to start with. But we do get a lot of, let's say there's a new judgment in the Supreme Court and they need to do a webinar on it. That's where I think some of these like playbooks really help. Is there are times where you need a one-off thing or it happens very quickly. So we kind of have to be ready for both to some degree, of this kind of longer form campaigns versus that we call them single asset campaigns, which I'm sure all of us have done plenty of, and they are effective, but not as effective as, to kind of Andy's point earlier, as having these bigger multifaceted multi-channel campaigns. And so we do a lot at the beginning. That's where our goals are, and we're constantly having conversations, particularly with the leaders, to say, what do you want to say? What are the 3 things you want to say this year, and how can we help fold that into these larger campaigns?
Are you in a position, in your team in a position to tell people that you need to prioritize better, or to say no on a campaign that they want to pursue that you knew would be doing too much with less impact?
Sometimes, but sometimes you do it because it's the right thing to do for another reason. We do always give people expectation setting, though. That is the key thing there, is like, even if we're going to go forward with it and we don't think it's going to hit this, we'll say our expectations that this is not going to get a lot of engagement for this reason, and just letting them know up front. So again, it's kind of goes back to, we're in a bit of that education period of letting people know what types of content are working, what maybe will or won't, and then giving them other alternatives if we think that we could tweak it to be a little bit better. Sometimes people veto those, and sometimes they listen to us and it works out. So
I'm fortunate enough to be in an organization now where we're really empowering all of our employees to be leaders when it comes to prioritizing. Mm-hmm. And it's actually really compelling. There's some really fascinating ways of expressing that. And when someone came to me the other day and they said, we have to be lazy like a fox. And I was like, I've never heard that before. And he said, we need to do less, but still maintain or improve our impact. How do we do that? So with that in mind, Andy, are you in a position to help strategically prioritize the programming that your team is delivering?
So, I mean, as far as making decisions, it rolls up to me, but what really I've learned in the last year and tried to get more into is understanding the needs of the different teams, and especially the different geos. When you think about selling something in North America and you think about selling that same thing in Asia Pacific, for example, those are very different worlds in many, many ways, right? And one of the ways is maturity of the market. So we are ubiquitously known in North America. We are actually the only known provider, or one of the only known providers in Asia Pacific, but it's more of a sales motion, right? So I have to take into account how and where we present ourselves and how our business runs in that area. And so I've been a lot more flexible in setting priorities in the sense of the go-to-market strategy for that particular geo, but I still set everybody aligned at least once a quarter for at least 6 weeks on the theme and as we talked about before, right? So that even if your go-to-market strategy is more long form content, classic B2B sales motion stuff in APAC, you're still talking about the same things they're talking about in North America. If a user flies from there to there, they're going to have a very similar experience. And I think, that's the big bet we've been making this last year. It's working quite well for us. And that's how I prioritize, is just to make sure everyone's aligned on the strategy, but then let them decide the priorities on how exactly they're going to execute against that, as long as they stick to these tenets that we've set for ourselves around execution and maximizing ROI and maximizing the benefit of what we create.
I love that. And I think, Brachel, you had said, you kind of alluded to that earlier with your partnership with corporate communications, but I think having strategic imperatives that you all agree on for your markets forces prioritization, because you have to reduce the number of them. you have to, from the start, all agree on prioritization. And there's so many, well, you know, I've worked in larger companies where there's so many people who are my partners that are really focused on growth with me, who I respect and who bring a lot to the table on helping us define and put a lens on where our growth opportunities are. So I love that, Andy, and thank you. So Matt, I know we're at 10 minutes in. Any hot questions coming in from the crew, from our
Yeah, I wanted just to
viewers?
kind of hear what Mick's thoughts and his comments that he had on just some success in getting employees to create content, and then also your success in ungating content, because I know the last one's always a hot topic on with marketers.
Yeah, I guess I can turn on my video now. I don't really pay that much attention to whether it's on or not, because we don't really use our cameras a bunch. Yeah, it's a unique situation because I've never had the ability to have feedback from content from literally every corner of the company. Our developers and engineers provide content on almost a daily basis. The challenge is all of them are in other countries, mostly in Kazakhstan and Brazil. So English is not their second language. So I still review all of the posts before they go out, just to make sure that clarity and grammar and punctuation are all correct. But we use HubSpot, and at any given time, I have 40 to 50 posts that are in drafts that all I have to do is just quickly review and then schedule. So I'm technically the only content marketer / social media / head of marketing / like all the other ones, all the other slashes. But the cool thing is that I don't have to do a whole lot to get those things out. And we have posts scheduled 2 months in advance. And that's not something I even asked for. It was just something that was just automatically here. They all seem very interested in the marketing function, even though they are all developers and engineers. They understand the importance of it, and they can discuss our product better than anyone else can, because they're much closer to it and actually build it. So why not, use their expertise to create that content. As far as gated content goes, I think the last ebook that we did was in 2020. And it just didn't seem to make that much of a difference between gated and ungated. We're a product-led company as well. So our product kind of speaks for itself. So it really didn't seem necessary to gate content anymore. I've always been a proponent of ungated content. Just finally with a company that allows that to be the norm, or the rule rather than the exception. So we just stopped gating it and haven't seen any dip in acquisition, revenue, engagement. None of those things have really seemed to change hasn't changed to the negative as a result. So we just leave it all ungated and let people learn on their own time and for free.
That's fascinating. Wait, so you're never on camera? You're so good on camera. That was pretty damn good.
Okay, I'm not anymore. I cut my teeth in. I'm a journalist by nature. I went to school for journalism, and I spent several years in television. So my first job out of college was a copy editor for local morning news. And I found myself filling in from time to time. So being on camera was part of my living for a while.
You were front of camera and behind camera,
yeah.
right?
Exactly. So I just don't think to turn it on as much anymore.
I actually think the best teams are hiring more and more people like you. And it's like this ability to understand the craft of developing a narrative or a story arc, while also understanding the craft of creating a good piece of content and producing it. So kudos to you for making the transition. I think there's a lot of us on the phone who come from that world and reinventing ourselves and still delivering for audiences. And I think that's the big thing, is like if we're focused on our audiences, a lot of the tenets that you learned in journalism are really necessary, and sourcing things in a smart way and making sure that you've got the audience in mind and the setting in mind and the context in mind, and delivering what their needs are, what their needs are. So kudos to you. Thank you for chiming in.
Certainly. And I love what Andy said. If I could just remark real quick on what he said earlier, as far as creating content, not specifically for the decision maker, but for those who influence the decision makers. I've been a fan of that since the late 2000s. Was taught that by a mentor of mine, to let those within the organization who can influence the decision makers be the real driver behind everything. And I've just always felt that was the way to go. And I appreciate hearing that from you.
Thank you.
I'm so impressed with Rachel and Andy and their perspective here on growth. There's so many things that I've written down that I hope to apply to my day-to-day practice and what I do. So thank you guys so much for your participation, your insights, your energy in this call. But before we go, I want to kind of turn it over to Matt, because I think Matt has some housekeeping messaging for you guys and maybe some other thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you, Rachel and Andy. It's been a pleasure working with you all to put this on, and really enjoyed the conversation. I also have a notebook full of notes, and we also are going to have a recording that we'll send out. It'll be on the website as well. So if you want to go back and see anything, and as well, I think most of you are pros and content community members, but if you're not, we are open to accepting new members, particularly around digital and demand and growth marketers, as we see this movement of content and data and growth moving together. So I will drop a link in the chat if you're interested in joining. We'd love to have you. And that's all I have for us today. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rachel and Andy.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah,
Bye, guys.
Happy Thursday.
Bye-bye.